Hey guys. So the book I chose was By the Shores of Silver Lake by Laura Ingalls Wilder. The pictures were by Garth Williams, and this is a Wilder Award winner. It is for grades 5th and 6th. Pretty much a 4th grader that was at a higher reading level could probably read it. This book was copyrighted in 1939, and it is about the Ingles family. They lived in Plum Creek, Minnesota, and one day their aunt stopped by, and she came to tell Pa that the uncle needed help at their business back in South Dakota. And they were very poor. They had been very sick, and Pa knew that he had to take this offer. If he went and helped his aunt and uncle, he would get paid $50 a month. And right now they were struggling to just get by. The crops had been destroyed by a storm. They were struggling. They had no money. The girls had been sick. Ma did not know how they were going to travel, and she didn't want to leave their farm that they had built there. Pa said, "Ma, you have no choice. We have to go. I will go by wagon. You guys will go by train." So Ma and the 4 girls went by train. They had never rode on a train before. They had never seen a place full of people like that, full of pretty dresses, and the girls were just astonished. They didn't know what the captain on the train was doing. He had such nice clothes on, and why was he following them? Was he being weird? And that was just his job. He was getting paid for that. So they rode the train and met Pa in South Dakota. D Summit was the town name. And as businesses were falling apart and nothing was working out, the town was crashing. Everybody was leaving. Pa was not getting paid. Times were getting tough again. Winter was approaching. So the surveyor of the town came by one day and said, "Why don't you guys keep track of my place and stay here while we leave for the winter, and we'll be back." And his house was a mansion. The Ingles family was used to living in a house that was run down, and when it snowed, it would snow on them when they were sleeping, and they'd wake up with a foot of snow on them. And they were always cold and very scarce food. If Pa didn't bring home something, they didn't eat. So they were astonished that this offer had came to them. And they moved in. It was warm. It was huge. Every girl had her own bedroom. It was stocked full of food. And they were able to survive the winter. They knew spring was coming, and it was April. So they thought that winter was over and everybody would start coming back. Well, everybody knew that the settlements weren't going to be there long, so everybody started coming back 2 months early. So Pa began to freak out that he would not be able to get the settlement he wanted to build his homestead on. So everybody started coming in. Ma was furnishing all these men. One night she had 15 men in her house. So she got smart and she decided, I'm going to charge them. I can't afford to feed and bathe and bed all these men for free. So back then, 25 cents was a lot of money. So she started charging 25 cents for one meal and to stay overnight. So before they knew it, they had enough money to pay for their homestead. That was a big deal. Everybody moved back into town. Pa built a few businesses in town that were later sold for more money. Laura, the oldest daughter, started teaching because that is what her mother told her she would do. It was family history. So she started teaching girls across the street, and her sister Mary, whom was blind from the sickness that she had got back in Minnesota. So then they lived happily ever after. After Pa got their homestead built on the settlement they were able to purchase. And everybody moved back. Aunt, uncle, surveyor, and the town was going, and the biggest it had ever been. So this book was awesome, and it's going to be awesome for me to read in my future class. I remember learning about Laura Ingalls Wilder, but I don't think I ever read any of her books. And maybe one in like 8th grade, maybe. So this book, I felt, even me, like I could take situations from my life and tie it to what they were living. So like when they were on the train and was like, oh my gosh, is this how people live? Like they didn't know that. And when I go to the city, because I'm from a town of 80 people, and when I go to the city, I'm like, how do you deal with all these people? Like, do you walk around in heels every day? Because I barely get out of my pajamas. Do you ride the train or the substation, or you don't drive a car every day? Like, we have to go 45 minutes to the closest town. So I felt like that was a connection. And being little kids in the story, I feel like children will only multiply that by 10. They'll just be able to connect and connect. And if they have a disability or they have something wrong, Mary was blind. That was a big part in the book, how she could continue through life. And that brings me to my next point, that a big lesson that I took from this book that I would hope that most students would take would be the Ingles family lived in a very rough time, and they were having a rough time getting by. So when positive things, Pa stayed positive. He's like, I don't have any money, but I'm going to go find lumber, and I'm going to build a business in town. I'm going to sell it for money. So he did that. But the only reason he was able to do that is because he stayed positive. So even when negative things happen in your life, you have to stay positive. And it kind of shows students what it was like to live back then. Like at supper, they weren't allowed to talk unless they were spoken to. And they got one biscuit and like, I don't know, a spoonful of something else. I mean, the adults got tea, they got water. They didn't even have milk. Their cow wasn't producing enough to do milk or butter. So they were in very scarce times. So it had a lot of lessons in it. It was a good read. I stayed into it. I read it in one day, and I'm not a big reader. So it definitely flew by, and I hope to someday be able to relay what I felt to my students. It was a very good book, and I highly recommend it. And then the graphic organizer that I would do would be more like a chart. And on one side, they would write situations that happened in the story. And then on the other side, they would write how these situations from the book related to their lives, or a problem they've had, or a situation in their life, tie it to them somehow, so they have to find that connection if they didn't get it while they were reading it. That always helps me understand a story a lot. So yeah, it was a really good read, and I can't wait for the next one.